Hello, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to my corner of the universe again. I want to make a little short video about what to do if you're stopped by the police and you're open carrying in your car. Now, I live in Oregon, so this is Oregon specific advice, but I think it applies pretty much everywhere. And I open carry in my car most of the time, and uh, I just got stopped the other night, yesterday, as a matter of fact, and yeah, it's a little bit scary when you do and you're open carrying, and I'm going to tell you how I deal with the situation, and I think it could help you from getting shot. So, I think I'll just tell you what happened and say what I did and what the officers did, and it worked out just fine because here I am with no bullet holes in me. Um, so I turned the corner. I live in Grants Pass, Oregon. I turned a corner, and after I turned the corner, all of a sudden behind me the swirling lights, and I'm in my truck, and I have my gun with me. I have it in the cup holder, visible. It's visible. So I see the lights. First thing I do is I pull over, and it was cold out. I hit the button, put the window down, and the very first thing I do, even before the officers get out of their car, is and I take my hands like this and I stick both hands out the window, so they can see my hands and that I have nothing in my hands. And really, nobody taught me to do that. It's just I want them to see my hands and that I don't have any weapons in my hands. And I think that's the very first good step. I put my hands outside the window, and then in this case, the officer walked up to the car, and I said to him, uh, and the number one rule is to be polite and respectful. I said, "Officer, um, uh, I have my gun with me in the car." So, and he takes a little step back, like, oh, a little bit surprised, but not really. Um, and he nods his head, and he said, "Let me see your license and insurance." I give him my license, insurance, give it to him, and he looks at it. And he said, "Registration." That's for the registration. Now, I my registration was actually under the visor, but I didn't remember that. I thought it was in the glove box where I carry it most of my cars. And I said, "Well, it's in my glove box. Do you want me to reach for it?" Don't One thing you don't want to do is he asks you, uh, "Can I see your registration?" Just don't reach over into your glove box because you've already just told them that you got a gun and you don't want to spook them. And one thing you have to understand is, and I believe this is true, that when officers are stopping a car, there were two officers to stop me. That's a very, very dangerous time for officers. There's probably more officers stopped, shot doing routine traffic stops than anything else. I believe that's true, although I haven't looked up the statistics. So don't reach into your glove box to get your registration without getting his permission to do so. And in this case, the officer said, "Well, no, that's okay. I'll just run it on the computer in the car." I said, "Okay, but," and no, I'm in Oregon. this truck is registered in California because, well, it's my long story. It's my sister's truck. So I told him, well, the car has California plates, but he didn't care. He went back to his car. Now, what they do when the officer stops you with two officers, here's what they do. One officer will come up to your window. The other officer will circle around to the other side of the car to cover him to make sure that you're not going to pull a gun or anything like that. So I'm talking to this officer. He starts to go back to his car. I see the other officer on the other side. I roll that window down, and I said, I have my gun with me, and I point down there. In this case, I have one of those hog holsters that I put in, which are really good, and in my seatbelt, but I've misplaced it. So the gun's in my cup holder in my truck, is where it was, but clearly visible. In Oregon, your gun has to be clearly visible. And so I pointed to him, and the officer nodded, and he said, "Oh, we have no problem with that. That's perfectly legal." He said, "Just don't go for your gun." So, so even uh, I think it's very, I guess there are some people that say you don't have in Oregon. I don't think you have a duty to advise them of it. In some states you do, and I'm not sure about the Oregon law. I don't believe that's the case, but I think it's very wise to advise the officer that you have a gun. And another thing you don't want to do is you don't want to just say, "I have a gun," because that could be misinterpreted as a threat. So, like I say, what I did, I said, "Officer, I have my gun with me." Okay, in a very non-threatening way. So the other officer stands there, and he's got me covered. Tells me, "Don't go for your gun." Of course, I didn't. And then the guy comes back, and he said, "Oh, they had asked me if I'd been drinking," and I said no. He comes back and he said, "Well, we saw you kind of go a little bit over the line," and he said somebody called it in that you were a drunk driver. Man, I don't know. Maybe I did. Hey, it was night. It was foggy. Maybe I did go over a little line. I really don't know. But that was the reason why they stopped me, because somebody said that I was a drunk driver, and clearly I wasn't. And then he gave me a little. He said, "Well, how many quarters are in $1.25?" And I said, "Well, could you repeat that? Because I didn't quite understand at first." And he said, "I said, okay, 5 quarters." He said, "All right." And that was the end of the contact. He handed me my driver's license. He said, "Where are you going?" And I gave him my address. And I said, "I'm going home." He said, "Okay." Handed my driver's license and my insurance back to me, and I told him, "Okay, thank you, officer." They didn't. I guess they could have wrote me a ticket for. I've gotten tickets before for being a little bit over the line, which is kind of a silly ticket. I wasn't driving unsafely. So, but he didn't. They were checking me out to see if I was a drunk driver or not, and clearly I wasn't. And they sent me on my way, and I said, "Okay, thank you, officer." I said, "You guys be safe out there." And I continued on my way home, and it worked out just fine. So those are my little tips. Put your hands out the window. Let them see your hands. Those guys want to go home to their families at night, and they don't want to be shot. And they're a little bit apprehensive when they, maybe not all of them, they do it enough times and maybe they get over that. But it's a dangerous time for police officers. You put yourself in their shoes. I put my hands out there so they can see my hands. I think that's very important. Don't make any movements don't go into your glove box without their permission. Be respectful. Yes, sir. No, sir. And you know what? You'll be just fine. But drive careful. Try not to go over any lines. And that's it. I have to. You know what? This was. I want to give a shout out to the Grants Pass Police Department. They were very professional, and they were also respective of my Second Amendment rights, and they did a good job. And so that's what happened. And I hope you find the video useful. Just it's really pretty simple. Um, let them see your hands. No quick furtive movements. No opening the glove box without their permission. Polite and respectful, and you should be just fine. All right. God bless, and I hope you don't get shot by anybody.